What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Adventure Outpost, your hub for all things movie related. It is actually request day here at the Adventure Outpost. It's the first time I've ever gotten one, so obviously we had to do what we could to get it flowing. So I decided to put everything else I was doing on the back burner so that I could bang this video out. We had a request from a fellow YouTube subscriber, Danny Boy 89, wanted me to go in and do my rankings for all of James Cameron's movies. And since I didn't do it back in December when Avatar: The Way of Water dropped, I figured now is actually a pretty solid time to drop it anyway. Avatar: The Way of Water is crushing it at the box office, so why not drop our James Cameron rankings? So, Danny Boy, this bad boy is for you. This is our rankings of all of James Cameron's movies. Now, before we get into this, you gotta know, I don't hate any James Cameron movies. I love all of his movies. These are just simply the order in which I love them. And secondly, we're not going to see his first technically directed movie, Piranha 2: The Spawning. One, because I've never seen it. Two, because he doesn't even really consider it his directorial debut. He considers The Terminator his directorial debut. So I feel pretty comfortable in just excluding that one. We're just going to omit that one from the record books, and we're just going to go from Terminator onward, and we're going to go through the entire list here now. And we're going to kick it off beginning with The Abyss. This is a really, really good science fiction movie. It's an underrated science fiction movie. This is probably James Cameron's most underrated movie. I feel like it just kind of slipped in under the radar compared to all of his other big budget and more mainstream ones that really hit with audiences. This one always just seemed to just come and go, I guess, plagued with production issues. This movie is famous for making two people. Like, you want to talk about the days when people who worked with James Cameron fucking hated his guts? This is the movie you'll go to. I think Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantino, I think is how you pronounce her last name, want nothing to do with this fucking guy after making it this movie. And after watching the production, I can see why. Like, it sounded like absolute fucking hell. But anytime you're filming underwater, it's got to be so goddamn challenging, and especially back in the 80s, like, it had to have been such a fucking whirlwind adventure to make this movie. But it is so much fun about a bunch of people down in a submersible under the ocean surface that discover an alien presence down there and their findings with it. It's a really fun movie. I really enjoy it. This is another movie too. Watch all the behind the scenes stuff that you can, because it's just as fucking interesting as the movie, because the hell that these people went through to make this movie and all the shit that the hurdles they had to jump through to make this movie, it's just freaking just insane to just watch along with and just see, like, motherfucker, like, yeah, that's how they did all that. Like, that's fucking crazy. Up next after that is True Lies, another one of his more underrated movies. You don't hear as much of it compared to all the other stuff. This kind of fell in the wayside in the 90s, sandwiched between Terminator 2 and Titanic, two of his biggest movies. But that doesn't stop this movie from being fucking just loads of fun. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger as a spy that goes around, just does some badass spy stuff, and he has to deal then when he finds out that he thinks his wife is having an affair on him while he's off doing spy stuff, and he uses all of his spy stuff to try and entrap her in whatever the hell is going on, and then they end up getting involved in international terrorists and a whole bunch of stuff that just keeps going on. It's just ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, but it's just such a fun action comedy. It's like a rom-com mixed with action, mixed with that. It's just something that only James Cameron can pull off, because he's just a fucking man like that. Arnold Schwarzenegger is great in this movie. Jamie Lee Curtis is great in this movie. It's just absolutely just so much fun. A movie people might be surprised to find this low is The Terminator. I do still love this movie. I just think compared to some of the other stuff that he's done since then, it's just so much more entertaining and so much more well done. Like, this is a very bare bones plot. I still think it's really good. I think the way that they filmed this movie is really interesting. Like, the guerrilla filmmaking that they did, where they pretty much didn't even have permits. They just, like, ran up, filmed as quickly as they could before the cops showed up and fucked off. It's really interesting for a movie, but it really shows in the production value of this movie. So when compared to some of the other stuff where he has the budget and just the ability to do whatever the fuck he wants, this kind of falls to the wayside for me. But the story is still so much fun about, you know, a cyborg that goes back in time to try and kill the future resistance leader. It's just so interesting and unlike anything you had seen at that point when this came out. I remember seeing this as a kid with my dad and just being fucking terrified that this movie was just absolutely insane. Like, the production value on the T-800 looks really fucking good, even when it, like, skimps down into just its exoskeleton. It's just a fucking fantastic science fiction action movie. Up next is James Cameron revolutionizing the 3D technology for the first time, and it is the first Avatar. This movie is a lot of fun. I know this movie gets a very bad rap from people. I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's just super entertaining. It's just one of those movies that's just like you just feel immersed and really escape to a new world. And that's what I love out of my movies, is that you're going to give me that escape. I'm going to forget about the world outside. I don't need like freaking incredible amounts of like Academy Award written dialogue or plotting or anything like that. I just need you to take me somewhere that I feel like I've been somewhere new, and you're giving me something that I feel like I haven't seen before. You're giving me something that's the same but new. And this one is very much like that. Like, people complain that it's just a ripoff of Dances with Wolves or Pocahontas or Fern Gully and all that, but it's like all of those are derivative of each other as well. But no one ever bitched and moaned when those ones came out. I think people just unfairly want to bitch and moan on this because they don't feel it deserves to be the biggest movie of all time. But nobody gives a fuck. Like, just because you don't feel it doesn't mean that it wasn't. Like, people, the collective response of the world respond to these movies, and it shows between this one and the new one, as both of them are in the top 5 of the highest grossing movies of all time. Like, people respond to this world, to these environments, to this movie. Like, it shows that derivative doesn't mean a goddamn thing, and nobody gives a fuck if you don't like it because it's just Dances with Wolves. But I don't know how anybody could have been sitting in a room and have heard somebody come in and pitch a story where they go, listen, I want to make Dances with Wolves, but in space with aliens. Like, who wouldn't be like, fuck yeah, man, that sounds dope, let's do that shit. Like, if this movie was just a mid-budget hit and like wasn't like one of the highest grossing movies of all time, but somewhere in the top 50, like in the lower ground, people would never complain about this movie. People would be like, yeah, this movie's great, it's awesome, I love it. But they want to complain about paper thin characters, but then go on and love the MCU, which is just littered with paper thin characters. It just reeks of people complaining just because they don't like that it was so successful. And I mean, I'm sure there's a collection of people that don't like it simply because they don't like it. I'm not saying they're not out there. It's totally fine. But I just feel like this movie gets unfairly hated on. And it makes me go to defend it more simply because I just feel like it doesn't deserve all this hate. Like, sure, it doesn't deserve like all the, like, people are like, this is the greatest movie ever. That's a little, like, that's hyperbolic, very excessive. But this is a very entertaining movie. This is a very well-made movie. And it's just a lot of fun. Like, I can watch this movie anytime it's on, and I get some enjoyment out of it. I enjoy this movie. It is a lot of fun. And that's sometimes all you need from a movie. And continuing on with that thread, up next, right after that, sitting just ahead of the first Avatar, is Avatar: The Way of Water. This is a movie very much like the first one that is just done on an even grander scale. The story in this one has a bit more meat to it. We really dive into a little bit more of it than just getting into this world and the mechanics of this world. In this one, we really get to get into the dynamics of the family in here and see how Jake Sully is integrating into this life, integrating into this world, and seeing how with his family now, they are going to do everything they can to try and stay together as this world starts to expand and really start to go wild. I loved everything in the middle portion of this movie when they go into the Metcaean, I think the tribe is called, and they start doing all the underwater shit and everything. Like, leave it to James Cameron to just immerse you in this just absolutely beautiful world, and leave it to James Cameron to really understand what makes 3D work, because I don't like 3D movies, but I love his 3D movies because he just knows how to utilize it to the point that it's not just a gimmick, that it really adds to the flavor of the movie. Because I saw this movie once in 3D and I saw it once in 2D, and I liked it better in 3D. I thought in 3D, when they go into the whole middle section when they're in the underwater, it pops so well and it looks so beautiful, and it's just amazing the level of detail that he's able to bring out of 3D. Is an absolutely fantastic filmmaker, and this movie is a lot of fun. I really love the whole water section. The whole last hour of this movie is just so fucking enjoyable, and it's so much fun, and it's so entertaining. I don't know how people, I mean, I can get people that are just like, yeah, it's paper thin characters, or, you know, it's just this, it's this and this, and it's like, yeah, sure, it is totally all that stuff, but that didn't stop me from enjoying it nonetheless. Like I said with these movies, sometimes you just need a movie where you can just turn your brain off and enjoy, and if it's done well, it's perfect, and James Cameron is the master at doing that. He knows how to make a movie accessible to the entire world and bring everyone together to enjoy this collective piece of cinema, and Avatar: The Way of Water is him at the top of that, just absolutely just knocking those out of the park. Third place is Aliens. I only have the quadrilogy here, so obviously we're just showing off the box set. But Aliens, James Cameron's foray into the Alien franchise, is not only my favorite Aliens movie, but it's just fucking one of the best James Cameron movies ever made. This one is just a fucking action-heavy movie. It's just a mile a minute, just never slows down once it puts its foot on the gas. It's just fucking just absolutely phenomenal. Bringing in just like so many, just inundating you with just dozens and dozens of aliens as opposed to just the singular alien from the first one, and taking it out of the claustrophobia of the first one and just making it like this fucking like post-Vietnam PTSD like war-laden war film. It was just such a freaking insane idea. And bringing in the fucking mother alien at the end is just so, oh man, it's just so good, telling the story of motherhood here within this world of Alien. Excuse me. Freaking just Sigourney Weaver is fantastic. This is probably my favorite Sigourney Weaver movie. She is just so goddamn good in this. Michael Biehn, fantastic. Always got to give a call out to my legend, Bill Paxton. You were the fucking man. Game over, man. It's game over. Now we get into our top two. Now, as always, anytime we watch a ranking video for anything of mine, my 1 and 2 are always the toughest ones to go through, because whenever you're going through anything, we're invariably going to come to 2 movies that I fucking love so much that it is impossible to differentiate between which one I love the most. So on any given day, you could come at me and these ones can switch. It's the same deal here. Depending on the day that you come to me, these can switch. But on the day that we do it here, these ones are falling where they lie. And the runner-up in second place is Titanic. This is one of the greatest movies ever made. It actually just got its re-release in theaters, and of course, you know, I went and saw it. Me and my fiance went and saw it in 3D. And just like I said before, with just how well James Cameron knows how to utilize 3D, he absolutely does. Because while in a movie like Avatar: The Way of Water, it seems like it's a no-brainer to rock the 3D and utilize 3D, you wouldn't really expect to get 3D from Titanic. But they managed to make that movie look absolutely spectacular in 3D and made it absolutely seamless. And most of the time, I didn't even think that I was even watching it in 3D. Just the level of depth and just realism that he gets out of it. He is absolutely the master of 3D. He is the only person that I trust to make 3D and actually make it look fucking good on the screen. This, what can we say about this movie that hasn't been said a million times by everything? It's one of the greatest movies of all time. At the time of its release, was the highest grossing movie of all time, beaten only by himself. This is just one of the greatest movies to ever do. It's just a fantastic love story. It's a fantastic disaster movie. It's just such a whirlwind adventure. It's probably the last true epic that was ever made, that felt like an epic, that felt like a big, huge, long spectacle. We don't really get movies like this anymore, and it's just one of the greatest movies ever made. I can't compliment this movie enough. I can quote the majority of the movie. I can probably like go through beat for beat this entire movie. It is just one of the best to ever do it. But there can only be one, and anybody who knows anything about James Cameron knows that number one is Terminator 2: Judgment Day. This is James Cameron firing on all cylinders. It's taking every trick he knows how to use in a book and utilize it to just perfect degree. I grew up on this movie. My dad showed me this movie when we were kids. I probably saw this movie way younger than I ever should have, but I loved Arnold Schwarzenegger. My dad showed me everything from Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this was always my favorite of his movies. There was just something about this movie that just spoke to me. I remember the first time watching it and just being glued to the screen by how amazing that this movie was. Even back before you could know anything about movie making, just being amazed at the spectacle of this movie, at the stuff that they did in this movie. I'm still amazed today at the scene where they have the helicopter fly under the low suspension bridge. Still floors me to this day. Like, one of the greatest set pieces of all time. Everything about this movie is absolutely fantastic. James Cameron is just an absolute fucking legend. The idea to make Linda Hamilton like an absolute just killing machine, like she's more robotic than the Terminator in this movie because of just how like detached from reality she had to make herself to get herself and her son ready for Judgment Day. It's just picture perfect storytelling right there. This is the de facto movie of his career. While Titanic and Avatars might have reached bigger heights for him and more mainstream audiences, I think Terminator 2 will forever be the legacy that proved that this man was one of the greatest writer-directors of all time. And that'll do it for the list. My man out there for the recommendation. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down below if these lined up with what your rankings are for James Cameron. Let me know what your favorite is. Everybody else out there, let me know what you love from our boy James Cameron. It'll be interesting to keep watching and seeing how the other Avatar movies will stack up in this. From all accounts, from the way he's hyping it up, it seems that from Avatar 3 and onwards, it's just going to get crazier and crazier. And I'm here for it, man. It's going to be so interesting to watch how these Avatar movies not only do do storytelling wise and how the movies do, but how they do at the box office. If we're going to end up, when all is said and done, seeing all 5 Avatar movies in the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time, like that would be fucking insane. I wouldn't put it past James Cameron to do some crazy shit like that. But it'll be interesting to see all that in the next few years. But this is the wrap up now. We're done here for today. So until the next adventure, you have been you, I have been me. These are the movies that we love so much. And until next time, adventure on.